Tom McCarthy, you're an executive producer of 13 Reasons Why, in addition to directing the first 2 episodes. First off, how did you first get involved in the series?
I was approached by 2 people, Brian Yorkie, the showrunner, creator of the show, and Steve Golan, one of the executive producers also. Steve was one of my producers on Spotlight, and Brian I have known from the New York theater scene for quite a while. 2 very smart men, and I think Brian might have reached out to me first and said, "Hey, it was sort of right at the end of the whole award season in Spotlight. We were kind of coming up on the Oscars." He said, "I know you'll probably get your hands full, but I have this book I'd love you to take a look at," and this idea, and he had written the first draft, the first episode at that point, first draft of it. And I took a look at the material and I just immediately connected with it. And I like both those guys. I really thought a lot about Brian, and we just sort of started talking about it.
And 13 Reasons Why is the first project you've directed since Spotlight, that your Oscar-winning film, which won Best Picture last year. In just 5 or 10 years ago, it would have seemed unusual to kind of follow up an Oscar-winning film with a TV series. But nowadays, there's a dividing line between film and TV and streaming. It really seems to have completely dissolved in terms of the quality you find in those media. Is that what you're finding these days?
Well, there's certainly, I do think it's shifted, right? The landscape has shifted for certain. I mean, in my case, you spend so much time during award season, months and months, talking about a movie and promoting a movie, and it's not a highly creative enterprise. And I was really just eager to kind of roll up my sleeves and get back to work on something, and I wasn't ready with my next film. So, these guys showed up with this really wonderful material that I thought was very relevant, and I think proved to be so. And it just seemed like a great opportunity to kind of jump in. And we were I think I was a month later, I was up in Marin scouting and casting, and we started creating the show. So, there is something really nice. I think, it happens a lot. The British do it really well. They kind of slide back and forth between TV and film. And you see, like, TV sometimes, in the right conditions, TV can really get going very quickly. In this case, that was so. So, it's wonderful just to be able to get to work on something and not always have this really long runway, if you know what I mean.
You've done a good deal of work on TV as an actor before, but this is your first TV directing. Is the process very different in terms of directing a TV show versus the process of directing a feature film?
Well, not at first. At first, when you're putting together and starting the first 2 episodes, it feels very much like starting up a movie. Now, there's other considerations that you have to take to consider, such as the overall arc of the show, where you're going, what you're setting up, is it sustainable moving forward in terms of the other episodes. So there's certainly, as a director and as a executive producer on the show, things you have to keep in mind. But I think when we were really setting up the first 2 episodes, it felt very similar, the process. The casting, which was rigorous and seemingly endless, finding the right area. I mean, Brian and I both kind of settled on Marin in our minds, but we had to go up there and really kind of suss it out and make sure it made sense. And just doing all the kind of work that you do, the legwork, the grunt work, to get a film off the ground. That felt very, very similar.
And the casting in particular must, because this is a TV series about mostly younger characters, teenagers, high school students. And in there you've got some even the young actors are pretty much, veterans of their field, even at a young age. But, there are other relative newcomers in the mix. How did that, process of casting and working with this young cast come about?
Like I said, it was a long process. We were in the casting room a lot trying to put this ensemble together. So it's not just individually; it's also what does the group look like and work a lot to process. And specifically, Hannah was a very difficult role to cast with some just handfuls of really hundreds of really talented actresses. The pool was very deep. It was very inspiring how many really strong young actresses there were that were that showed up for the role. Katherine's a perfect example, right? She was living in Australia at the time and really done very, very little, specifically on film and television. And, we saw her tape and something about it made sense. And we were kind of narrowing down our pool. And then I went back and looked at the tapes again. I think she was from Perth. And I was like, who is this young woman from Perth? There's something about her, a quality that's really right. And we didn't even have time to fly her in to audition, because we were getting so late in the process. So I did my first ever Skype audition with her, where I was in the room like you are now on a computer screen, and we were just chatting back and forth, and then I would watch her performance and give her notes. And that was an example of an actress who you could just, with each, kind of each go at it, would just get incrementally better, just leaps and bounds, really. She just kept improving. And, for someone who had not done a lot on the screen, her sort of film IQ was really high. And from there on, every other actor was different, and it was really Dylan Minnette, had a lot more experience, and Dylan's just a pro, but he at the same time, he really maintains this wonderful boyish awkwardness that sometimes as people get more experience, they lose. And then, all the way down, so many wonderful actors that go on and on. Obviously, you cast that first 7, 8 roles all at once, and it was a really exciting task.
Since you, the one difference between this and TV, this and film, I'm sure, is you're directing the first 2, but then of course other directors are cycling in, directing the subsequent episodes. What was it like working with those other directors, for the rest of the season, after you had sort of set the tone?
It's very odd. You're right. It's really odd and kind of wonderful. It's wonderfully collaborative because there's so many creative minds coming to the table in this process, and specifically with the directors. Many of them had known their work, and some I didn't at all. So it was really exciting. I would normally talk to them briefly before they went in, answer any questions they might have. But as it got deeper and deeper in the season, they had a lot to kind of source off. We'd created a lot of the episodes at that point. So it's really fun. At that point, I was back in New York and was handling this on phone calls and Skypes and emails, but really exciting just to see the dailies coming in and see how everyone was handling the material and the choices they were making. And you could kind of feel as the season went on, you could kind of feel the show maturing in a really great way and really finding its feet and kind of picking up and making what we did better. And that was really exciting.
Now, of course, the series is about Hannah Baker, who is a teenage girl who dies by suicide. And one of the most important moments of the series comes in that season finale, which depicts her death. There's been a lot of talk about it since. In the build-up to that episode over the course of the season, what were the conversations like to try to decide how to show it, how much of it to show, the process of bringing that to the screen?
Well, they were extensive, right? This was not a decision that was made lightly or without a lot of thought and a lot of care. I think everyone was sort of going back and forth, and I think Brian had a real vision for it. And I think even then there was a lot of push and pull on it. What's the best way to do it? But I think everyone came down on what ended up on screen, that was really the right way to approach this. And I guess there's obviously a lot of conversation to be had about it and the choice, and some people agree and some people disagree. And I think that's what makes the show good. I think we were all, from the beginning, the idea was, let's really start the conversation. There's really not enough conversation about this. This is amplified these ideas, tenfold, right? I mean, literally everybody's talking about it. And from my experience, hearing from really mostly parents, they're all like, wow, it's tough. It was hard, some of it, but man, it really got us talking. And I've heard that, countless times at this moment in time. And it's really, that's what it's all about, I think.
And an interesting thing about Netflix is they produce so much content, so you never know what's going to hit, how big it's going to hit, and what the response is going to be to any individual thing. This one seemed to blow up fairly quickly after its premiere. Did you expect it to have that kind of strong impact so quickly to develop that conversation and all that interest?
In short, no. I thought we had done our job. I thought we had done a good job. I was very proud of the show and the work that we were continuing to do at that point. But no, you can never really anticipate that. And I think maybe we underestimated the kind of appetite. Look, we set out with the show to make a show for young adults, for that market specifically, and said, let's give them a show that they'll reach to, something that feels sophisticated, nuanced, and complex, but still speaks to them in a really clear way. And you know, that's really Brian Yorkie's vision, and I think Netflix and Paramount really supported it. When I sat down with both those companies, that's what they were like. That's, you know, they're like, look, we brought you in because we want to have something that feels sophisticated and elegant and mature, but we want to gear it towards this audience. And we think if we build it, they will come. And well, they came. And, you know, I think, you know, every time we sort of have this debate and conversation, maybe is a better word, about the controversy surrounding the show, I keep coming back to the young people who are driving it. I think young people today are incredibly sophisticated. Do they know everything? No. Do any of us know? But I really think how they really came to the show, and that response is valuable, right? There's a lot of, you said, on Netflix and all these different outlets, there is a lot of content, and they made a very clear choice to engage with this show, and I think that says a lot about the final product.
The series is returning for a second season, which is going to be particularly interesting for this show because that'll take it beyond the book that the series is based on, and you know, it seems like the format would be different because, of course, the framing device from the first season, Hannah's taped recordings, those probably wouldn't play in exactly the same way. Were there discussions even during the process of season one where the story might go or how it might proceed in the event of a second season?
A little bit. We really didn't think that way. I mean, there are maybe moments where we just mused on it because we needed to put our minds somewhere else. But no, there was so much work to be done getting that book to the screen. It was really a big undertaking, and that's where all our energy went. I know firsthand that Brian said many times, if we're one and done on this season, I'm good. I just want to make a good show. And he did that. And I think, you know, season 2 was, you know, a response to that, right? So I've already started to read the episodes and outlines of what they're doing, and I think it's really smart. It's very engaging. You know, it's bringing back a lot of characters, introducing some new, really exciting ones, and it's forwarding the conversation in a really smart way. So I'm excited for it.
And season 1 does end leaving a lot of available material. You know, still a lawsuit pending against the school by Hannah's parents and some other characters whose fates are still kind of up in the air. Is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to exploring further or seeing, you know, seeing a story through?
Unfortunately, I'm corrupted because I know too much now. I know where they're exploring, so I want to be very careful not to divulge anything that these writers are crafting and reshaping as we speak. So I'm gonna you know, plead the fifth on that one and just and say I'm excited about the direction of the show. There's one or two really exciting sort of style choices that I think, and content choices I think are really going to be cool. And you know, like with all these pieces of work, you know, they're pushing it. They're trying to find what's new and exciting about it, and I think everyone's going to be watching.
You know, 13 Reasons Why is generating some awards buzz now because of its popularity, because of the amount of talent in front of the camera and behind it. You know, but of course you've been in that kind of awards kind of spotlight before, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting for us awards watchers is that was one of, you know, to us it felt like one of the closest Oscar races in recent history, and you know, and it's an interesting night because, you know, you won the screenplay award early in the evening and then up in the end of the night. What was it like when Spotlight was announced? This is the best picture of the year.
It's probably oft, you know, overused or saying, but it's a very surreal feeling. The film's name announced, and you know, you're right. It was close. We had no idea where the night was going. There was wildly exciting films that year, and wildly I mean, comparing Spotlight to The Revenant, to Mad Max, to all these other wonderful shows. It was really a really interesting year, Big Short. But you know, it's just a really kind of, you know, truthfully amazing feeling. You know, you just think, wow, this is actually happening. They just call it Spotlight. I was actually backstage at the time, so I already won for screenplay with my co-writer Josh Singer, and so we're watching with all the other winners at that point around this little monitor with a stagehand, and kind of surrounded by everyone, and we were all kind of making jokes about it, and you know, and then it happens, and then I don't remember much. Then I just remember sort of being on stage hugging people, and it was, you know, it's pretty thrilling, and you start thinking of the whole journey, not just of the film, but all the films and all the projects and all the people that have helped you along the way, and it's a really exciting and emotional night.
Award season has become such a massive undertaking in recent years in terms of the sheer number of events. Events and we call them precursor award shows, but all these other awards that are given out in you know, leading up to the Oscars, and and Spotlight was already generating a lot of attention going back to that September when it was at Venice Film Festival. What was that whole September to, you know, the Best Picture winner is kind of that whole process like? Was it, you know, are you still trying to recover from that?
It is a long, I don't know how people do it year after year. I mean, the ones that do, but it is a long and brutal brutal sounds funny because all you're doing is, you know, running around talking about yourself, but it's very draining. And like I said, it's, you know, for artists, it's not terribly creative, right? It's sort of the opposite of that. It's talking about your work as opposed to producing work. And most of us do this because we like making things. But look, you do it in the service of the movie. You understand it's the game. You understand it doesn't happen every year. And when you're fortunate enough to be included in those films, you take advantage of it, and you do your job, and you act like a pro, and you show up and you say what you're supposed to say home. And, you know, you try not to get too caught up in it all because, you know, the competition of it all gets a little bit silly after a while. These are all really, really good movies.
You worked as an actor before. You worked as a writer and a director. But while you have worked as an actor, you've worked with some impressive writers like David E. Kelley in Boston Public and David Simon for, you know, On the Wire. Did they or other writers that you've worked with influence your own work as a writer?
Of course, they all do. You know, Clooney, Clint Eastwood, directors I've worked with, writers I've worked with, you know, you just sit back and watch these guys who do such a large volume of work and such a high level of work, and it'd be hard not to learn, quite honestly. But I think Kelley had a real impact. Just the way he approached his writing, his kind of nuance, his straightforwardness, his complexity, his humanity. But they're all those people you mentioned, incredibly talented. You know, certainly helped shape. And you always feel very fortunate as a young actor, writer, director to have the experience to be on these sets and be kind of absorbing it.
Well, I want to congratulate you again then on 13 Reasons Why, and of course on that Oscar win for Spotlight, and potentially Emmy wins now for 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Very good. Yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting, man. Thanks.